Good evening, everyone. It is my pleasure to be here with you to share highlights from gearing up following the 2021 NAPE earthquake that happened in Haiti. I participated as a graduate student, and it was an amazing experience. But for those of you who may not be familiar, GEER stands for Geotechnical Extreme Events Reconnaissance, and GEER typically collects data after extreme events or disasters as a way of preliminary surveying. So I'm going to be sharing some of the lessons that I learned here, and I hope you will see how important this experience was. And to start off, there are three main lessons that I learned. One of them was the importance of community engagement and also making science accessible to the community. And the second one was the importance of interdisciplinary and international collaboration. And the third, which was particularly important to me, was the importance of having a holistic understanding of the communities, including their cultures, especially those that are dealing with multiple disasters at the same time. This is particularly important when we're dealing with developing countries such as Haiti and Rwanda, which is where I'm from. So for example, I will start by sharing my story. Growing up in Rwanda, I can relate a lot to what Haiti has been going through, including the natural disasters, the political instability, as well as the financial instabilities as well. So a friend of mine recently shared, who is also from Haiti and was also a social scientist, Joan Perraudin, saying that when we're looking at natural disasters, we should not solely focus on what is already established in literature. We should also look at the culture and also not look at the physical aspects of simply the physical aspects of what is affecting the communities, but also the emotional needs as well as the psychological needs of the community beyond the traditional reconnaissance efforts, which are also really important. So I was really torn when I was trying to decide what to focus on for this presentation. First, there is this extraordinary experience that I'm really excited to have had to be a part of. And then there is also another side that's also important, which is a very difficult story that the people of Haiti have, but there's no mind to tell. I wanted to lay that out there first before I proceed. For those who know me, they know that I usually make a lot of jokes to just survive public speaking. But today I'm going to refrain from that and hope that I can share my experience. And for this particular GEER effort, you will see through what I share why it's special. First of all, it was a virtual experience for reasons that will become evident as I continue to share my talk today. So on August 14, 2021, Haiti was hit by a magnitude 7.2 earthquake that led to severe geotechnical as well as structural damages. This was preceded by the assassination of the president, Jovenel Moïse, and this was just about a month before, and this was July 2021. As you can imagine, this is already a devastating state that the country was already in. And immediately after that, there was a storm, leaving the country in an even more devastated state. And for those of you, you might also be familiar with the magnitude 7.0 Port-au-Prince earthquake that happened, the country was still surviving from. And at the same time, we were also surviving other disasters such as Hurricane Matthew, Sandy, among other disasters, as you can see on the bottom screens on either side of the auditorium. So there are multiple events that were happening at the same time, right? But before I proceed, I wanted to highlight this amazing team of wonderful people and intellectuals that worked really hard to collect and document the damages and also record the lessons that we learned as a group. And as I previously alluded to, because of the lack of immediate physical presence of the team and due to the aforementioned reasons that I already shared, the team collected data as quickly as possible, relying on third parties such as USGS, USAID, UN, and other resources like World Bank, among others. And the geotechnical damages were collected specifically using social media and other mainstream media platforms. So I just want to highlight the diversity here in terms of location, in terms of level, including the level professional level, including students, as well as the locals who are from Haiti. So eventually, after the data, we've been relying on social media and those other third parties report, the team was able to gather a group of Haitian students from the University of Haiti to conduct field reconnaissance on the ground. Now, as you can imagine, collecting data remotely could pose a lot of challenges. For example, when we see the damages such as the one presented in this slide, whether they're from social media or documented by local GEER members, it was difficult to identify the type of geohazards without understanding the subsurface conditions, which was a major limitation. So we had to rely on multiple reports to understand the damages that was recorded. So I contributed by mainly reviewing bedrock geology, topographic, hydrogeologic, and hydrologic conditions in identified regions of interest that had a lot of damages, and I was helping assess what type of damages we would expect. So that was based on the relative geologic age, the topography, and the groundwater and surface water resources as well. So for example, when we look at this map, I know it has a lot happening, but let's focus on the region of Lake Hai. The region of interest is shown with the red dots. So the region is surrounded by abundance of groundwater as well as really well-connected fluvial systems. So we already have an understanding of some damages that could be expected. So we also had to assess, based on the relative age of the geology and the VS30 values that we obtained from USGS that my colleague Christina put together. Hi, Christina. I don't know where she is. But she gave me permission to embarrass her. So comparing this region of Lake Hai, so we have the younger soil deposits that are shown in the pinkish color. And we wanted to make sure that we're getting similar information from the different reports that we're using. And compared with the proxy-based VS30 values that we got, we also realized that with Lake Hai also has relatively lower VS30 compared to the surrounding regions. And now if we combine it with the hydrogeologic conditions that we had already established with the groundwater resources and the surface water resources, we could predict liquefaction-induced damages in that sense, based on what we had observed. And this was indeed corroborated using the data that was collected either from social media or from the GEER members that were local in Haiti. So the technical content is amazing, and I learned a lot, but there are a few other lessons that I learned, and I touched on them in the beginning as I was starting my presentation so nervously, but it was really exciting to see how different components of the project came together and how nicely it worked to see the enthusiasm of each member of the team and how everything they brought to the table. You can imagine that despite the many challenges that were coming from working in a virtual environment, the team had the ability to maximize the resources, collaborate with each other, and to me that was a great example as I continue to pursue my career. And one of the most important parts of this project for me was a vivid reminder of having the people front and center in my academic and extracurricular engagements. And this was highlighted especially by having a social science team, which is a novel component of GEER effort, especially for this project. And specifically having engagement of Haitians, I mentioned a group of Haitian students who are collecting data in Haiti was also another example of community engagement. I come from Rwanda, so have seen how many times where these resources were completely disregarded and the community was not allowed to contribute. And it was refreshing for me to be on the other side and see how the engagement of the community and the fruits that came from having everyone contribute in the quote-unquote betterment of their communities. So this was really exciting for me to see, both as a person from a developing country and also a person who wants to contribute in the civil engineering world in the future. And on this note, it was also important for me to see that it's important to be able to make science accessible to the general public. So as I mentioned, some of the data was relying on social media. Some of it was collected by people who might not have had a scientific background. So it's really important that we're able to engage in science communication with our community and be able to make it easier for the community to understand the value of data so that they can contribute in disaster response. And another exciting portion of people-centered engineering that was appealing to me was the understanding that the multi-hazard nature of the different the different regions that we're actually usually dealing with. Again, I was focusing on developing countries, but this happens in other regions as well. Talking to the social science team, they highlighted that, again, it's important to look at the emotional and the psychological needs of the community by addressing them either through counseling or just finding resources that are customized for each traumatic event. For Haiti, it will look different. For Rwanda, it would look different. For New Zealand, it would look different. But it is really important for us to consider that and consider the culture of these people in the process. Now, as I continue to look for data after an earthquake or check off the next milestone, it can be really easy for me to forget or lose sight of what is important because I'm busy trying to achieve the next thing. I can forget for whom and why I chose a career in civil engineering. But while I hope all these challenges will end someday, I hope, and I try to remind myself that this experience will be a reminder, a continual reminder, that it is my responsibility to keep people at the center and the priority of all that I do. Thank you very much for being here, and I hope you're able to read the GEER report and talk to all the other amazing members that did all the work that has, it's a lot more than what I presented today. Thank you.